Welcome to Medicine with the Metals. I'm Mark, and this is Michelle, and we're here to share our psychedelic journeys with you.
Well, hey, Mark, how's it going today?
Man, it's going fantastic. You know, we had a really great weekend this weekend, didn't we? We headed down to Miami, another psychedelic conference, met some pretty cool people.
We were down there at Wonderland this year. Let's see, we caught up with Jules Callahan and the ladies at Being True to You. That was super fun. They were there from San Diego, California, I believe. We also met up with Charles Patty. So that was always fun. I love going to these conventions and meeting up with people.
Yeah, me too. You know, it's that networking, those connections we're making and what we're doing. And speaking of connections we're making, how about that plant medicine path in the Geo Directory?
I'll tell you what.
That is taking off.
It's coming to life. It is being offered free still till the end of the year. So now is the time to jump on there and get your modalities out there.
Absolutely.
So today we have got Jonathan Schecter. He is here to talk about the importance of breathwork in this community and while facilitating. So I'm very excited to talk to him about this.
But why don't we go to a commercial break real quick?
Okay, we'll see you in just a few minutes.
Tired of feeling like you're barely holding on? Are you searching online for answers, only to come up with more questions? Looking for ways to feel better and make life more livable? There is a way where you can feel better and take on the world. Transforming your mental health, nourishing both your body and mind. Embark on a journey to lasting happiness and vitality, all powered by the wisdom of Mother Earth.
Today we have breathwork and transformation coach and host of Vital Point podcast, Jonathan Schecter, joining us. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks so much for having me.
Not a problem, my friend. Hey, Irie, you know, we finally are getting to connect, aren't we? After what,
Yes.
2 years of trying to get back and forth?
Yeah. Well, we've both been growing for the last couple of years, so it's a perfect timing as always.
Yeah, it always happens at perfect timing, doesn't it? Well,
Divine timing.
Divine. So why don't we go ahead and let you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about what you do in this space and what brought you here. Let's go ahead and start with that.
Yeah, thanks. So my name's Jonathan Schecter. I'm a breathwork facilitator and integration transformation coach. And really where I've found that I really fit and feel good being of service is right at the crossroads of breathwork and psychedelic integration, like really teaching people how to connect with their breath, to enhance their psychedelic work, to help prepare and integrate, and even sometimes to replace the psychedelic work that they're doing.
Really cool because, you know, starting on this space, first of all, you know, let's go this. How did you get started with psychedelics and into this space? Let's get into that story first.
I've been a long time recreational psychedelic user. Had no idea what integration was really about or that it could be used for more than just like a good recreational time. And then I started to go through, I guess, what you would call a dark night of the soul. Everything in my life started to kind of fall apart. I was in a marriage for almost 11 years that was getting abusive and was very dysfunctional. I wasn't happy in the job that I was working in, and sort of sprinkled in there in the middle of all this happening were these really transformative high dose mushroom journeys that unfortunately, when they were happening initially, were kind of happening in secret because my ex-wife was not supportive of that type of activity. And so that was when I started to, you know, have these 5-gram journeys in the dark, you know, really following Terrence McKenna and starting to discover that there was a bigger world out there. And when the integration of some of that work and just the inevitable conclusion that, hey, this this marriage isn't really where I need to be. And I finally left. I was left in this place where I was like, even though I was the abused one, I didn't want to walk away from that just saying, well, I'm a victim and this person victimized me. I had to take a long, hard look at myself and say, hey, you know what? You were in this relationship for a few more years than it should have been. And I wanted to do some work on myself so that for no other reason, I didn't end up in a similar situation again. And so that exploration started me down this path of working more intentionally with plant medicines, a lot of ayahuasca ceremonies, a lot of high dose mushroom work, and eventually into doing ice baths, which led me to breathwork. And initially it was just kind of a curiosity. It was like, I'm doing a lot of medicine work. Like how crazy could breathwork be? You know, I was very skeptical of it. And then when I started to experiment with it, it was like, oh, wait, I know what this place is. You know, like I'd get to these places and these experiences that were very reminiscent of the plant medicine experiences that I was having. And so it started to be this space that I could use to explore, to deepen the medicine experiences that I was having, and to have more time and more clarity around what was coming up for me in those spaces.
Yeah, really cool. You know, I mean, I think these go hand in hand, you know, breath work and psychedelics, and it all kind of works in together, because getting through a lot of these tough, deep journeys, you really need your breath in those situations. You know how important that is. We all do if we have experienced some of these medicines. Really cool backstory and how you got here and how you noticed that that dark night of the soul. I think we go through a few of those on this path.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, what really cemented this for me was, you know, I was doing, I would say, dabbling and experimenting. And, you know, even though I was working with facilitators for my plant medicine experience in the beginning, the breath work was all just looking up YouTube videos and trying different things and going to different people's, you know, breathwork events in, you know, here in Tucson where I live. And I ended up going to an online breathwork journey that was very, very intense. But the thing that was the most exciting about it to me was, as I was going through this experience, everything that I had been trying to figure out for myself in terms of, well, I know that this is really transformative and I'm really having these amazing experiences. How can I share this with other people? And all the ideas that I had in my head were like literally in this container. And I was so excited doing this breathwork experience. And so afterwards, I reached out to the facilitator and he said, oh, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. We're just about to start our first ever facilitator training program. So it was a 6-month program. A third of it was all personal development, like a lot of shadow work, a lot of inner child work. And it really went hand in hand with the medicine work that I was doing on the one hand, but also it gave me pause right at the beginning, because the expectation in this training program was that we were going to do at least one breathwork journey per week for 6 months. And I had this moment, I remember, like I was out on a hike and all of a sudden I just kind of stopped and was like, wait a minute. So I'm going to do these journeys that are basically as intense as a major psychedelic experience once a week for the next 6 months. Like, what did I sign up for? I'm not sure if I had put it in that sort of context that I would have been as excited to do it. But since I had already signed up, I was really committed. I just said, hey, I really need to start focusing on my integration and really taking this seriously. And so that's when I started changing my life in these really subtle ways, as far as my practices that I was doing every day and every week, and really putting a lot of emphasis around the preparation and integration of not only the breath work, but these other, you know, experiences I was having with mushrooms and other medicines.
So I have a question. Were you the first time that you went deep with breath work? Because I remember the first time I did it, and it was as powerful as ayahuasca for me.
Right.
Were you surprised? Were you surprised at how deep it was?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was very skeptical. Like I said, I mean, I've had a lot of LSD, experiences with LSD and, lots of high dose mushroom work and ayahuasca. And so I thought there was no way that breath work could be anywhere near, these really, really deep, powerful psychedelic experiences. And just like you said, just as intense, sometimes even more so. Like even just recently, I did a retreat for holotropic breath work and had an experience that really like shocked me and that I'm still integrating. And this is from somebody that's been, doing this work regularly for the last 4 years, really, so it's like, whoa, there's still levels and layers that I'm getting to. And, I feel like it's important for me in the type of work that I'm doing to continue to explore and to continue to do my work. That helps me show up for other people.
Can you explain or can you tell our audience about some of these type of breath works? You did mention holotropic, and I know Joe Dispenza has a beautiful breath work that I, picked up in my practices early in this path. I really love that man. I think he's really intelligent.
Absolutely.
And I think just explain to the audience the few different types of breath work there are. Sure.
So, yeah, right. Yeah. Because breathwork has become such an umbrella type of a statement, right? It's
kind of like integration.
Yeah. Like integration, or the example I always use is like, if you say to somebody, well, I exercise. Well, what does that mean? Do you do Pilates? Are you running on a treadmill? Are you doing CrossFit? Are you lifting weights? That.
Or do you pick up the sandwich and put it in your mouth?
There you go. Right. Yeah.
That's what I do.
So on a very base level, breathwork is breathing in an intentional way to create a shift or a change in your consciousness or your system. The way that I like to explain it is to put it into 3 different categories. And those categories really build on one another. They're not like separate silos. The first one is awareness practices. So starting with getting aware of the breath and then into the body, right? So it's having somatic awareness, and then ultimately connecting that with what's happening inside of the mind. And these are all connected, right? So we have these awareness practices. Then moving on to practices that are working to regulate your nervous system. Now, normally when you start with that, or even if you're not really trained for breath work, we all intuitively kind of know that taking a deep breath can kind of relax us, right? Like we've all heard that, like, hey, take a deep breath and relax. So we know that we can down-regulate the nervous system, get into the parasympathetic, that rest and digest. But we can also use the breath to energize, to upregulate, to intentionally move into that sympathetic part of the nervous system where we are more active and more activated. So that's the second sort of category. And then as we continue to upregulate, we can move into the third, which I would call transformational breath work, or you could call it holotropic breath work. Holotropic meaning moving towards wholeness, right? So this was a term coined by Dr. Stan Grof, who created holotropic breath work in the 60s. He was a researcher working with LSD and basically one of the fathers of transpersonal psychology. And when LSD became illegal, he felt so that the work that he was doing was so important that his curiosity was, can we get into these states that people are accessing with LSD without an actual medicine or a molecule? And one of the things that he had noticed when the people he was working with were sometimes coming out of the peak part of the LSD experience, but they were still processing something, is that they would start to hyperventilate. And that would sort of kick them back into a deeper part of the medicine journey. So the hypothesis was, if we did this breathing without LSD, would it be as powerful? And the answer is a resounding yes. And just like you were saying, Michelle, right? Like it can be just as powerful. I've had clients that have told me that out of 25 years of psychedelic experience, the most intense journey that they've had is with breath work. And I can say that some of my most intense, sort of insightful, life-changing encounters with the expanded states of consciousness would be with breathwork as well.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. So very interesting.
So I have a question about when you're doing the breathwork, probably when you're to the holotropic state, when you're into that state.
Yeah.
I remember my hands doing this and stayed like this really for hours, and it was painful. But I can't remember now why they told me this would happen. But now that we're talking about it, I remember it so well. What is that?
Yeah. So what you're describing is something called tetany. It's very, very common in the breathwork experience. And the explanation for tetany really depends on where you lie on the science versus, let's say, woo-woo scale of things, right? And within breathwork, there are people on both sides of the spectrum. So if you're purely in the science and performance and, functional breathing kind of area, that side of the spectrum, you're going to say that as you are doing this more deeper, faster, connected breathing, which we're often doing with holotropic. So you're doing something like this, right? You're breathing faster, deeper, and you're connecting the in and the out breath. So as you're doing that, you're changing the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. You're off-gassing more carbon dioxide. And that over time, the blood becomes more alkaline. There's different things that are happening on sort of a biochemical level. And as you get close to that hyperventilation state, you can have this tetany where it feels like your hands or sometimes your feet are cramped up. Sometimes we call it having lobster claws. Like it feels like you have these really extreme cramps, right? Now, if you're on the woo-woo side, the spiritual side, let's say, you would explain tetany as that energetically something is coming up that wants to be worked out, that through this state of breath work, you're entering an expanded state of consciousness. You're connecting with something that Stan Grof called the inner healer, which is really synonymous with consciousness itself. And that whatever resistance or whatever's showing up in the body is this sort of manifestation of trauma or other somatic energy that wants to work through, right? And that the tetany is really just it's how the body is working through this thing that wants to move and wants to energetically release, right? Now, for me, I personally think that it's a little bit of both, right? Because like you said, Michelle, you got that tetany. I get it maybe 1 out of every 4 or 5 times that I breathe. So I feel like if it was just science, everyone would get it the same way every time, right? And I don't get it that way, the same way every time. Not all my clients get it the same way every time. So what I do is I give people some tips for staying away from the tetany, because while it is very common, and while nobody's ever had tetany after they're done with breath work, and it will release on its own, like just like any other tension in the body, or, like physical tension, emotional tension, mental tension, it's going to build to a maximum and then release on its own. So the invitation is there, if you can hang with it, to stay with it. Something's trying to work through, like within the holotropic paradigm, the healing happens through intensity. So if there's an emotion that's coming up, make it bigger, make it more intense. If the body wants to move, let it be big, let it be intense, right? So the invitation is there to see if you can hang with it. But breathwork is also a very self-empowering practice. So we want people to feel empowered, where it's like, if this is too much for me today, I know how to work with it so that it will subside. Right.
And let's dive into that a little bit, if you don't mind. Let's dive a little deeper into people and that, because when I first started this path, I knew I was looking for all these different modalities, and breathwork was one of the first things I picked up, and I thought it was really interesting. But I always thought I was making mistakes. I thought I'm not doing this right, because I found out one thing though, really quickly. I found out that we don't know how to breathe. We don't breathe properly in America, or
just day to day.
We just,
right.
We always try to breathe from our chest. And this path has really taught me, I really gut breathe a lot through my nose. So like, let's dive deep into some of those quirks or whatnot that people have to overcome. Like, this isn't a perfection. There's nothing perfect about this.
Right. We call it a practice, right?
Yeah.
It's not a perfect.
Right.
I love that.
And like you said, people are approaching breathwork from a variety of different reasons, especially for folks that I think are probably listening to this podcast that are more interested in expanded states of consciousness, of working with psychedelics and plant medicines, and being able to integrate those experiences and for transformation or growth. Breathwork can be a great way to, like you're saying, learn how to breathe on a more daily basis. Learning how to slow the breath down, to breathe more through the nose, to activate the diaphragm. And that's going to calm down the nervous system. That's going to bring us into a place that's more coherent with our heart, with our nervous system, with what's happening in the body. And there's an awareness that comes with that, right? So that's the type of breathing that I'm trying to do as much as I can during my day-to-day. But also when I'm having my medicine experiences, I'm like sitting down and doing coherence breathing so that I am as aware of what's happening as possible, right?
So why don't we get into some basics right now? Why don't we, for the audience now, why don't you and Michelle were here. Why don't we do one really quick breath technique so people can see this?
Sure. So the first thing that I'd invite you to do is just notice your breath in the body. Like if you just start to take a couple of deep breaths, just start to notice where you feel your breath, where you connect with that sensation in the body. And then the next thing I would invite you to do, if it feels okay, is to start to breathe in and out of the nose. Now, one thing that we suggest sometimes in the beginning is putting a hand on the chest and a hand on the belly, because what we want to do is we want to start bringing that awareness of the breath moving with the diaphragm. Oftentimes we say breathe through the belly, but that's really only the beginning, right? The diaphragm actually moves 360 degrees around us. If we put our hands at the bottom of our rib cage and we're taking deep breaths, we might actually be able to feel the rib cage expanding, those intercostal muscles moving. So we want to breathe through the nose and we want to start breathing into the diaphragm. And then the next thing is just to slow the breath down, right? So within heart coherence breathing, we're breathing in for a count of 5 and out for a count of 5. And this is a guideline. There's research that's shown that this is sort of the optimal way to breathe. But if you think about it, breathing in for 5 seconds and out for 5 seconds, we're breathing 6 times per minute. The average person is breathing anywhere between 15 and 20. And if we have a lot of anxiety, we're breathing even more than that. So maybe slowing the breath down to 6 breaths per minute is too much, too fast, right? But just starting to slow the breath down as much as feels comfortable. The last tip that I would give is seeing if you can make your exhales a little bit longer. Right.
To get that excess out, correct?
Yeah. Well, and also so our inhale activates the sympathetic part of the nervous system, the fight or flight. The exhale actually activates the parasympathetic. So when we're doing these things, when we're slowing our exhale down, when we're breathing, taking deep belly breaths, and when we're breathing through the nose, we're literally telling our nervous system that there's a lack of danger in our environment, right? If like the example that we always use in somatic work is if a bear walked into the room right now, you would have these immediate responses, right? You wouldn't be sitting here going, yeah, let me just take deep, relaxing breaths, right? So right, exactly. We would have those gasps that, our nervous system would come online to keep us safe, because that's what the nervous system does. So we have to start showing the nervous system like, hey, it's actually okay to relax and to feel safe in this environment. Now, for some people that comes easy. For other people that are sort of been living in a sympathetic activated state where they're constantly in this fight or flight, or in a depressed state where they're kind of shut down, right? going into a relaxed state can feel a little bit strange. So we have to start to teach the nervous system how to be oriented to a more relaxed, regulated, and aware state. Because when we're in that state, we feel safety. We feel more open and curious about our environment. And all of these things are so great for working with medicines, right? Like when you're in a psychedelic state, we're purposefully and intentionally dysregulating ourselves, right? We're going on the roller coaster. So the more regulated that we can be through our breath, the more I think that we can get out of that psychedelic work.
Blue Alchemy, is that the name of your place?
Blue Magic Alchemy.
Blue Magic Alchemy. Okay, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Blue Magic Alchemy is my company for breathwork and for coaching. So Blue Magic. There's a few different sort of meanings of the name. I've had transpersonal experiences in my medicine journeys with both the medicine Buddha and Shiva, which are both blue deities. Also, mushrooms are blue, right? At least the fun part of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And I think that we can, really alchemy is the transformation of lead into gold, traditionally. For me, alchemy and this transformational path is really about taking the experiences that we've had and finding peace and finding benefit in them. One of the things that I've noticed doing my podcast, The Vital Point, where I'm talking to all different types of integration coaches and meditation teachers, breathwork folks, is there's a common theme, there's a through line, which is people going through these dark night of the souls or these personal crises, and then coming out the other side with some sort of healing, with some sort of insight, and then saying, you know what? Now I need to share that with other people, right? Like you guys are doing, right? You could keep your insights and your growth to yourself, but you're not doing that. You have a community, you have a podcast, you have brands, you're trying to help and share that inspiration and that insight that you've experienced with other people. And that to me is what alchemy is.
Awesome.
That's
that leads right up to my next really question for you. The challenges in this space, because me and Michelle have a lot of tentacles going on and we face a lot of challenges. So what is your biggest challenge in this space right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I came up with it.
I would say that my biggest challenge is continuing to push against my edges, right? Like, so even though I started this company at the beginning of 2021 is when I really started to go really hard at like doing online breath work and working with clients in person. It wasn't until April of this year that I quit my full-time corporate gig. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's celebrate that, right? And so, entrepreneurship is its own type of psychedelic journey, right? And its own growth. And I'm constantly coming up against the edges of what feels comfortable, what feels safe, and continuing to do my own work so that I can continue to expand, And in addition, I would say just curiosity. During the last year, I started working at an inpatient treatment center for behavioral health and substance abuse. And walking in there for the first time, I was like, what am I going to do here? Like most of the people that I've worked with are actively working with psychedelics. We're doing these deep dive breathwork journeys that, quite frankly, a lot of the benefit that you're getting from them is the openness and the surrender. It's the ability to open to whatever you're experiencing, especially if it's something painful like tetany or a big emotion that's coming up, right? And I thought, gee, I don't know if all the people that are in the center, if they're ready for that. So that's helped me grow as a facilitator. Like right now, I have 7 different groups that I run every week, and that's going anywhere from these deeper breathwork journeys to breathing specifically for regulating the nervous system, somatic experiencing, education on like how to work with the nervous system and different types of meditation. So it's helped me get more broad as a facilitator and as a teacher and as a coach. And, through that, like for instance, I have a 6-session coaching container right now called Breathwork for Integration that is much more full spectrum, right? It goes through all 3 of those breathwork categories that we mentioned before, of teaching people how to work with awareness practices, and then how to regulate the nervous system, and then finally into those deep dive breathwork experiences and how to integrate them so that people can use their breath in this full spectrum way, not only in their preparation and integration. And I'm totally biased that preparation, integration begins with preparation, right? But also to know how to be aware and present and centered in your nervous system with your breath during the medicine experience so that you can get the most benefit from the work that you're doing.
So I want to hear about what you're offering specifically, but first I'm curious, what is your daily practice?
Yeah, great question. So on a daily basis, I start with meditation in the morning. I know it's not fancy and there's lots of different types of meditation, but I've been a mindfulness meditation practitioner for 20 years. And so while I would say that my meditation gets more into the realm within the Buddhist context, which would be called Mahamudra meditation, really that's built on a foundation of mindfulness practice. So then in addition to any exercise that I'm doing, I'm trying to get into an ice bath 3 times a week. And I have a cold plunge here at the house, which makes that a lot easier. And then I do 30 minutes of that heart coherence breathing that we kind of went through really briefly earlier, where I'm breathing in for 5 seconds, out for 5 seconds every night before I go to bed. So that's on a awesome daily basis. And then I would say once or twice a week, I'm doing a shorter journey, something like a Wim Hof type practice. So for instance, this is one of the offerings that I have on a weekly basis. I have an integrative breathwork group that's only an hour long. And we do 30 minutes of breathwork, which is a combination of meditation, more Wim Hof style breathing, and integration. And then we have an integration sharing circle. So I'm doing at least one of those sessions myself every week. And then at least once a month, I'm doing a full on breathwork journey, like where I'm breathing for anywhere between 60 to 75, 80 minutes, taking it deep and really just really trying to be present with what comes up, because so much can come up. Some days there's, this emotional release, like there's maybe something that's just been sitting in my body that's just ready to come out. Other times it's very insightful. Like I might get, sort of downloads about what the work that I'm doing, or inspiration for a new project, or just sort of insight on what I should be doing next. Sometimes it's just very, very relaxing and just keeps the wheel greased, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your offerings now? How can we find you? What do you have out there? What's going on with Blue Magic Alchemy?
Yeah. So I have online breathwork circles. That's probably the most accessible way of working with me. Like I said, there's the 2 different types of offerings, and those can either be done on demand, like you can drop in per session to the weekly integrative breathwork circles, or the bi-weekly deeper dive sessions. And I call those breathwork for transformation. So it's a mixture of somatic awareness and meditation, the deeper, more connected breathing, and then integration as well. And then I also have a subscription for that, right? So you can come in on demand, and lots of people do, but I've found that the most benefit from breathwork actually comes from having a practice. So that was what inspired me to create the subscription and a community of breathers that are really committed to their own growth, their own practice. And for those subscribers, there's an additional breathwork journey that we do each month on the full moon. So altogether with the membership, there's 7 total sessions that you can come to each month.
That's awesome.
I also work with people one-on-one, both online and in person here in Tucson. And there's a variety of different things that I'm doing with them. Most of them, it's that 6-session breathwork for integration container that I mentioned, where we go through mindfulness, somatic awareness, breathwork for regulating the nervous system, both up and down, and then the fuller, longer journeys and how to integrate that and continue that for yourself after we're done working together.
Let me ask you this. Is there any time that you recommend somebody do breath work in relation to plant medicines, right? Like there's a dieta before plant medicines,
right.
There's pre-integration, there's post-integration. Do you recommend breath work as part of that preparation or post?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that doing a full breathwork journey can be a really great way to get ready for a medicine journey, because you're already priming yourself for going into that expanded state of consciousness, right? And even there's the research that's been done showing that when we're doing these deeper breathwork experiences, it's very similar neurologically to what's happening in the medicine space. The default mode network gets quieter as far as activity, and new neurological pathways and connections can be made. So at the very least, what I would recommend to a client is having a daily meditation and or coherence breathing practice that they're doing leading up to their journey. And then one longer breathwork journey would be good as a way to really kind of open, prime, think about intentions, just kind of get a feel of the land, right? Like it's almost like an exhibition game, let's say. And then definitely within the integration process afterwards, doing another journey and continuing that meditation and more functional breathing practice would be very helpful.
Okay.
This was like the very first modality I picked up after my experiences, because I knew how important it was. And I just knew how important it was during my experiences on these medicines. And we all see where this space is going right now. We all see where it's going, and it's booming. And I don't think it's only booming in the psychedelic. Everybody's looking for a way out, a way of happiness. I mean, just walk around. It's pretty sad out there. And I think what we're creating, what you're doing, what we're doing, I think it's just creating these foundations. And I always talk about this. I think foundations are really important in this space. And I think you're doing a great job of this. You know, I mean, people need to be, there are other modalities out there. There are so many other things. You don't have to dive into just plant medicine. We just feel for us, this was a great way to start. But these modalities that go along with it, like breath work and meditation and yoga and just whatever. It's just getting out of your mind. And that DMN, that default mode network is just like, once you can erase that, life is good.
But the breath is the most important part. It's the first thing we do. It's the last thing we do.
Right.
And on top of that, right, which is a very important point. I mention that often as well. If you think about, there's so many of our wisdom lineages and ancient cultures for which the word for breath and spirit are the same. If you look at Chinese, if you look at Sanskrit, Greek, and Hebrew, just to name 4, the words for spirit and breath are the same in all of those. So I think that our ancestors knew what we're just starting to rediscover, right? That the breath is a really powerful way into connection with the spirit or source or God or consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And really, like you were saying, Mark, the healing from these different modalities isn't just inherent in what we're taking, right? Like I would love it if it was that easy, where all I'd have to do is like drink a cup of ayahuasca or eat these mushrooms and like all the work's done, right? Yeah. But the healing is actually coming from the integration of what we're experiencing and being able to implement those changes and those insights and the clarity that we have. And psychedelics and plant medicines are a really powerful way to do that, because they give us that direct experience. And so does breathwork, right? It's like, we don't have to hear about it. We don't have to read about it. We're having the experience. We're like, oh, damn, this is legit, right? And then it's like, what do we do to actually bring that into the rest of our life, to be connected with that inner healing intelligence as much as we can?
Yeah, that's pretty an awesome explanation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, let's go, where do we find you online? But first of all, I'd like to ask one thing. I'd like you to maybe do a free course, or however we have to do this, for maybe the Plant Medicine Path group, maybe like get some more people involved with there. I think that would really be a good opportunity for our group, for some people to get involved. But tell us where we can find you. So what you're all about and where we can find you.
BlueMagicAlchemy.com. Basically anywhere where you find Blue Magic Alchemy online is going to be me. So on Instagram, I'm Blue Magic Alchemy, and TikTok. I would say Instagram is where I'm the most active as far as social media. I also have a YouTube page, which right now is mostly my podcast, The Vital Point. But yeah, anywhere you find Blue Magic Alchemy, you're going to find me. So I've worked really hard to kind of take that little niche of corner of the internet, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. That is needed, and that's what we're doing. We're setting these foundations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, go ahead, Michelle.
I was just going to thank you so much for what you do and bringing this to the forefront, and congratulations on leaving your 3D job and jumping into this full time. We did the same thing just about a year ago. It's beautiful. What you're doing is important, and I just want to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, likewise. Thank you guys for what you're doing, and thanks for having this platform and having me on. And I appreciate everyone in the space, right? There's so much that's needed, and there's so much more outside of what we all need in this sort of Western 3D world, which is to be able to thrive and make a living, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. And this movement, I feel, and what the medicines are teaching us is so much bigger than just that one dimension.
Wow, what a way to end this. Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jonathan Schecter, Blue Magic Alchemy, Breathwork. You're amazing. You can find them on the Plant Medicine Path as well.
Finally, great to connect with you. What a great discussion today, Michelle, huh?
Yeah, that was awesome. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect with him. We keep trying, and now we did. And what he's doing is so important. Breathwork is a beautiful modality.
And don't be afraid of it. There are it's a little bit different in the beginning. It's a little kind of scary, but we got to learn how to breathe right. And, we just need to learn how to breathe again, and just breathe, right, Michelle?
Just breathe. And here's the thing. He's right. You can get just as deep with your breath as you can with plant medicines. I did not believe that until I did it myself, and it's very powerful. So not only do we need to understand how to breathe every minute of the day, but going into deep holotropic breath work for medicine work is an incredible tool.
Well, I'm really excited about next show, right?
Yes, tell us.
Who's our
coming
next show?
Mark Howard.
Who is it? Mark Iboga Soul.
Yes.
What a good friend of mine, and we're going to talk a lot. I think we might get deep.
Yeah, we will. We were with them last weekend up in Canada, the Howards with Iboga Soul, and we're going to have him on next week and talk to him. We're very excited.
Yeah, Iboga is one of those medicines that, now it's really well talked about in this community because everybody's so scared of it. But I'm going to tell you, it's the real deal.
It is. Okay, finally, our affiliate Mama Dose is going to be having a Thanksgiving sale. That's going to be coming up. What is that special?
I think it's you buy a 90-day supplement, you get a 90 free, and you buy a 30-day supplement, you get a 30-day free. Now, I think they're only running that for Black Friday, though. That's
right. That's going to be a Black Friday sale. They're going to be running that through the weekend. So Jump on Mama Dose and see what that's about. Thanks so much. This has been a fun time.
Thanks for joining us today on Medicine with the Metals. And don't forget, hit and subscribe to our YouTube channels and follow us on all our social media platforms.
Let's go through them. The Plant Medicine Path, Mama Dose, we've got Church of the Sacred Plants, and Medicine with the Metals.
Follow us. We're the Information Education Psychedelic Information Education Network.